What's up everyone, it's Dakota and welcome back to another modern video, and it's been a while since we've done one of these and I think this is a good time to do one. It's my beginners series, kind of going over different decks in either modern or pioneer and just going over exactly what the deck is supposed to do in a little bit greater detail than I would normally do in a deck tech. Try to give some tips, tricks, things like that to get you going and get you ready to like play like a new deck, like Mono Green Tron, for example, is what we're going to be going over today, to basically help you kind of get the beginner part of like learning the deck out of the way, and then you know opening you up to different strategies and things that you can do when playing the deck, rather than just picking it up and being like, I don't know what the heck's going on. So this is meant to teach, it's meant to learn. It's not the end all be all. You're going to be a master at playing this deck. Of course, with any of the decks in Modern specifically, and even in Pioneer as well, like you need to get some games in with it. You need to, figure out some of the situations on your own just to kind of get a feel for what's going on. So hopefully this will be kind of like a way to jumpstart some of that learning. But of course, before we get into all of that stuff, if you want to support my content and you like what you see, please consider ringing the bell and subscribing to the channel, so then that way you know when videos like this get posted. If you go into the description of this video, you'll be able to see the deck list that I'm using, and to go over, copy, do whatever you need to do with it, and also links to my Discord server and my Twitch channel. I would really appreciate it if you followed all those. Easy ways just to support me and my content and keep me making these videos. So the list in particular that I chose was from the Pro Tour. I chose Simon Nielsen and Team Handshake's Monogretron list. There is some nuances I like about the deck more so than Christian Calcano, who actually took his to Game 5 of the finals of the Pro Tour. But there's like a few things I like from this, notably that there is uh, it's a little bit better against scam because you play like these three dismembers. You have Warping Whale in the main deck, so you have like essentially a removal spell for like a turn one scam creature, and then answers for like the various like Ragavan decks and the Bowmasters and things that are running around. For four copies of the One Ring in your main, not putting one in the sideboard to get with a Karn the Great Creator, and really I like that choice specifically because there is going to be some matchups where you want to just have the best chance of drawing the One Ring just for its protection effect, be able to draw some cards, maybe end up finding that other Tron piece, and then being able to go like Karn the Great Creator, go get something like Unsnaring Bridge, and just kind of like lock your opponent out and kind of stabilize from there. Uh, but most importantly, if you've never like played this deck or never seen it or wondering what the heck Tron is supposed to mean, a good place to start would be looking at the the three main lands in this deck. We have Urza's Mine, Urza's Power Plant, and Urza's Tower. Now, one of these lands, they all add one colorless mana. If you have two of them, they both add one colorless mana each. What gets really crazy in like the Tron part of it, and you'll hear people say, Tron counts 1, 2, 7, is because when you have all three of these, your Urza's Mine and your Urza's Power Plant will add two colorless mana instead of one, and your Urza's Tower will add three instead of one. So, do the math, 2, 4, 7, so that's where the counting of 1, 2, 7 comes from, because like you play one Urza's Mine, it adds one mana. You play an Urza's Power Plant, you have two mana. If you play an Urza's Tower, you have seven. Uh, Notably, with these lands in particular, they're not actually looking at the name that you see on the top of the card. In later printings of these cards, the land has a subtype that is related to the name of it. So Urza's Mine has the subtype Urza's Mine. Urza's Power Plant has subtype Urza's Power Plant, so on. So, like when you have cards like Alpine Moon or you get Spreading Seas, things like that, something that changes the type that the Urza land is, you don't actually have Tron, which, if you have one tower, one power plant, one mine, and someone turns your power plant into an island, you don't have, three mana from the tower, two from the mine, and then a blue from the power plant. you have one colorless from the mine and the tower, and then a blue mana from the power plant. So just as an example, it's not something that's like necessarily intuitive on the cards themselves. It was something that I actually had to learn, quite a few years ago when Tron was dominating and was just very good in the meta with everyone wanting to play like blue white control, Jeskai control, and things like that. So, just something to know when you play this deck, and you're playing it in paper. Obviously, you play on Moto, it will correct it. But in paper, that is something to keep in mind that if someone messes with the type that the land is and it doesn't make it in addition to its other types, it just makes it that type, you lose Tron in that way. So now that we kind of got that out of the way, what the heck are we doing with this? So obviously the goal of this deck is to assemble mine power plant tower as fast as possible. And then once you do that, abusing the mana to play spells ahead of curve. So uh, what you end up doing is you prioritize assembling, all three of these lands on the battlefield. One of the best plays of like back in the day was Karn Liberated, just because it cost 7 mana. It was perfect. You played your third Tron land, you end up playing a Karn Liberated, you -3 to like blow up someone's land or get rid of a problematic permanent that was going to affect you negatively. If like they had like a Tarmogoyf or something in play, you get rid of it. Karn is a very hard planeswalker to get rid of, just at high loyalty. The fact that if you just wanted to, you could plus it up to 10 loyalty and, decide to blow something up later if you want. But generally speaking, like one Karn liberated to just kind of go after it, and blow up an opponent's land. And then if they do nothing to the Karn, you're just getting to do it again, is pretty good. Like double Stone Rain for 7 mana is pretty good because Ulamog is essentially, like a lot of the time, in my case, a 10 mana, like double Stone Rain, plus, 10/10 indestructible. Uh, so these is kind of like the stuff that you're trying to power out. You have like Walking Ballista in this list in particular that you can just, play a giant Walking Ballista and kind of ping down your opponent's board. If they're trying to play with some of the smaller creatures, eventually you could even, just take this up, super high by, paying a bunch of mana into it after you've already cast it, and then just kind of like ping your opponent down, attack for a chunk of damage, and then end up killing them with the Walking Ballista. You have Wormcoil Engine, which I think in a meta now where people are kind of attacking more and getting more into the red zone, and it's less about comboing and things like that. Wormcoil Engine ends up being a little bit better for the fact that it's going to race, and even if you're not in a situation where you can necessarily attack, and outgain your opponent, it's going to block probably one of your opponent's biggest things, end up killing it in combat, just from the fact of being a 6/6, not to mention that if there is something bigger, the Death Touch is going to take care of it, gain some life, and you get 2/3/3s left behind, one of them with lifelink and another one with Death Touch as well, so you can kind of trade for even more of your opponent's resources, which is kind of the name of the game when you are playing something like Tron, because even though you can assemble Tron very quickly, you also kind of want to have as much time as possible, because obviously the more time that you have, the more chances you have to draw, any of these haymakers that you have in your deck. So we know the lands, we know what we're trying to play out. Like, how do we end up assembling these lands? Like, obviously, it'd be ideal to, have all of our 7-card hands just have one mine, one power plant, one tower, and then a bunch of these cards. Unfortunately, that is not the case, and thankfully for this deck, it is not so much it's not a bad deck to mulligan with. And to be quite frank with you, like 7 and 6-card hands that don't have an immediate way to give you Tron on like turn 3, I usually just end up mulliganing, because this deck does mulligan very well, and it has all these redundant pieces to find all of your Ursa lands. So specifically how we're doing that, Sylvan Scrying, super easy. It just searches for a land, you reveal it, put it to your hand. Obviously, this finds missing Tron pieces along with 4 Expedition Map. Same thing, pay 1 mana to put it into play, 2 sacrifice it, search for a land. Pretty convenient when you can go Urza Land Expedition map, second Urza Land crack map, go get the one you're missing. Pretty convenient. Another way that kind of sets up turn 3 Tron. Another way is playing like Chromatic Sphere or Chromatic Star off of one of your Urza lands, and then playing the other one and getting to cast something like Sylvan Scrying. On top of all that, you have a card like Ancient Stirrings, which looks for a colorless card, which could dig for a Tron piece if you needed to. Also can find you any one of your Haymakers, like Karn the Great Creator, Karn Liberated, Ulamog, so on and so forth. Scrolling down even farther to like the artifacts and stuff, like Sphere and Star both draw cards. So that's like another way that like once you kind of establish Tron, you can like play and crack all these spheres and stars to eventually hopefully find something or find like an Ancient Stirrings that will dig you even deeper to find some other threats. There's 3 Relic of Progenitus in this deck. Obviously good at controlling the graveyard when you need it to. There's some situations that can come up where you cash in a relic to draw a card, pay 1 and remove it from play to remove all graveyards from play, or to remove all the graveyards from the game and then draw a card. Does have a little bit of synergy with Karn the Great Creator. Like if you have a Wormcoil in your graveyard, you have a Wormcoil in here too. But you can get rid of your graveyard, and then if you want to pick up like an Oblivion Stone or like the One Ring, you can minus a Karn and go get those cards from exile that you ended up exiling with the relic, not just these cards that are in the sideboard. Which this is very likely to come up 3 relic, 4 ring. Like you just play your second ring to get rid of your first ring, crack a uh, crack a relic of Progenitus, and then you're able to just like minus go get the ring and kind of loop some protection and stuff for you. Granted, like you can only do it so many times because you have to activate it multiple times, whatever. But in a lot of those cases, just getting to draw an extra card, give yourself more turns to eventually like find a way to get out of it, with the option of like looping is pretty insane to be honest with you. See, there's like 4 Oblivion Stones in the main. This is kind of like your way of getting to deal with some of the more like bigger like go wide decks. Obviously, doesn't destroy indestructible creatures, but this is a way that you can play this. You can protect some of your own things if you have time, but if you don't, just playing this and blowing up the board, resetting it is a-okay as well. It just kind of gives you some more options to use, all that mana that you can generate with the Ursa lanes. There's a Talisman of Resistance or Resilience. While not good against opposing Tron decks because Karn the Great Creator shut these off, against other like Blood Moon decks, kind of like Scam, this allows you to have access to green mana so you can Boseiju or still cast your Ancient Stirrings or your Sylvan Scryings to go find Boseiju to then blow up their lands or to blow up their Blood Moon so that you can continue to power out some of these big monstrosities that we have here. I am saving it for last in particular because it's not necessarily the most complicated, but definitely where recognizing the decks that you're playing against and what people are doing and what the meta has going on can help you, and that is basically your entire sideboard being a Karn Wish board. Nothing new with Tron decks as of late, where they basically have like the whole sideboard as things that can go get with Karn the Great Creator, giving them multiple copies of them. You have Chalice of the Void for the Cascade decks. You have Engineer Explosives, for Rhinos and some of the other token decks. Mainly Rhinos though. Tormod's Crypt for the graveyard decks. You have Walking Ballista as like another big threat that you can play. Again, like you play one of these big enough, you can pump even more mana into it, hit your opponent, and then remove all the counters and kill them. Grafdigger's Cage is like another card that you could play like against Scam and other people that want to bring things back from like the graveyard, put them into play. Haywire Might is like another way of dealing with non-creature artifacts or enchantments. Works pretty well with like a liquid metal coating, where like you essentially have like a one shot, to stone rain somebody, which is one of my favorite terms in Magic, is just stone raining people. Pithing Needle for opposing planeswalkers. You have Stonebrain to mess with those Cascade decks and like those combo decks. Could also really get decks like Creativity as well. And Snaring Bridge is a way to make sure that you live into the mid to late game. You have Phyrexian Metamorph, which you can use to copy an opponent's like Arcana Cruelty if you're playing against Creativity. I played a Tron Mirror and someone Phyrexian Metamorphed my Ulamog, which is definitely a way to kind of like stop you from attacking with your Ulamog. Well, not even really, but just the fact that if you're low on life and they copy yours or you copy theirs, it's fair game. It's going to be pretty brutal. Uh, from there, Worm Coil Engine, like I said, pretty good against like some really aggressive matchups. Helps you race, Cityscape Leveler, dealing with problematic permanents, being a big 8/8 trampler, and then just getting to attack and continue to do the same thing. And in conjunction with Karn the Great Creator, you're just destroying their things and you're giving them Power Stones that they're probably not going to be able to use to begin with. And even if they can, like the Karn is going to stop them. Lastly, Sundering Titan with all the 4 and 5 color mana bases, Sundering Titan could just come in and blow up like 4 or all 5 of your opponent's lands, which is another pretty brutal play that can kind of come from this deck. Real quick though, uh, even though, and I thought for a while that if you just have like Karn the Great Creator and this like wish board, you don't really want to ever sideboard, but as time has kind of went on, and even like watching the Pro Tour and stuff, and this now makes sense to someone like me. Uh, Cards like Chalice of the Void, even like Engineer Explosives, Tormod's Crypt, things like that, and even like Grafdigger's Cage. You want to bring these cards in and then side out maybe like the One Ring or one of your other cards. The reason being that with how well that this deck mulligans and how much that you want to mulligan for some really good hands, you could easily keep a 6, 7 card hand that maybe only has like 2 Tron pieces guaranteed, but you have like one of these sideboard cards, and then you have like, a bunch of spheres and stars. That's a hand that you could keep, just as a fact that like it's going to give you those extra turns to find Tron and then find something to impact the board and eventually win the game with. Um, that is that's basically like the entirety deck. Like the idea of what the deck is trying to do, kind of the roles that all these cards play. I keep referencing like how well that this deck mulligans, and with some like this deck in particular, like you have to be very disciplined with your mulligans. Like you don't want to keep 2, 3 land hands that are like a power plant and Urza Saga and a forest with an expedition map and then like a bunch of haymakers. Like that just isn't going to work out for you. You definitely want to be willing to look at hands, be like, okay, I have 1 Tron piece, I have a second Tron piece, I have a third one. All right, this hand is a keep because from those 7 and 6 card hands, even like the fives, it's very likely that you will have a way to make Tron complete, and then also have something immediately to use with it, whether it's Karn the Great Creator, Worm Coil Engine, maybe an Ulamog or a Walking Ballista, whatever, any one of those things. And as you get down to, 5 and 4 card hands, you're really just focused on assembling Tron at that point because this deck has all these things that will let you just keep going through your deck. Like if you can just assemble Tron, it doesn't matter if you draw like 3 Chromatic Spheres in a row because you're just going to have so much mana left over anyway that you're still probably going to be able to cast something off of it, or you're eventually going to find something, and you just have to wait till next turn rather than that turn to play something, or you just end up drawing something big anyway, like a Karn the Great Creator being one of your best plays, and then kind of from there just getting to chain, big things, especially again with Karn the Great Creator and having all these cards on the sideboard that you can kind of nab with it as well. From there, uh, you just want to prioritize, longevity. Tron is a deck that will, it has to get there in a way. So when playing this deck, you're definitely going from like one tree to another where it's like, you have to you have to assemble Tron. Like I'll say in like 95 to 99% of instances, like your game plan before you worry about anything else is, can I get an Urza's Mind, an Urza's Power Plant, and Urza's Tower in play? Okay, I got them in play. What the heck am I doing? What gives me the most mana to play a threat, what gives me the most looks at a threat that allows me to still play something on that turn, and just kind of understanding, that it's just the nature of the beast at this point. With a lot of these other decks in the format, you do care about what your opponent's doing. You care about what they're playing. And in Tron, you really don't care until your life total is at a point where you need to do something about it. And you obviously have an entire sideboard and even some of these like main board tools to help you basically stop your opponent from killing you. You have multiple copies of the One Ring, you have multiple copies of Oblivion Stone, you have Karn the Great Creator that can go and search up ensnaring bridge even to stop your opponent from attacking you. Chalice of the Void or Engineer Explosives to clean up tokens or stop cascade decks and so on. There's so much this deck does that even in a video like this, you're just like scratching the surface. And really, the important thing is being very disciplined with mulligans and just understanding like the sequencing of things. Uh, Lastly, before I sign off for the video, I guess definitely making sure that you can play your tower last is key, just because it generates the most mana and it's going to allow you to have the most plays. As you can see, like getting to play like a turn 3 Oblivion Stone, like you just draw, at that point, like you don't need to worry about anything else. You play the tower last, you play this. On your next turn, you're able to crack it, and you have, four, 2, 4, or 5 mana, which at 5 mana, or even just like having another Tron land, you play Karn the Great Creator after you blow up the board, which works out very nicely for you. Whew. So that is the Mono Green Tron deck for Modern, and the kind of beginner's guide and the tips, tricks, and know-hows to kind of get you started playing the deck. Overall, barring anything happening to the One Ring or Karn the Great Creator, this deck is going to be very good. And I think Tron usually has like its highs and lows, and when it's good in the format, it ends up being very good. And with the many different things it has to combat, cards like Bowmaster, even like opposing rings, even dealing with Karn the Great Creator itself, it is very resilient. It's a deck that I would say is like, once you get down the mulliganing and the sequencing and stuff like that, it's a very easy deck to pilot and a very easy to just win games where like your opponent is struggling to do something. So that's gonna do it for me in this video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like on the video. Comment down below your disdain for Tron, because even though Tron is like the less of the bad guy, it's still a bad guy. Um, but of course, another thing you can do is subscribe to the channel, ring notification bell and stuff. Easy, free way to support my content and keep me making videos. And in the description of this video, you'll find a link to this deck list and my Twitch and Discord stuff. So that's going to do it for me. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you all in the next one.